Hello, my name is Ryan Hoffman, and this presentation is on the Community Risk Reduction Plan for Riverside Township. Start us off with, we always want to talk about not only fire prevention, but why is it important? So these are some facts and figures that I was able to collect through some research from the National Fire Protection Association. So briefly, people feel safe when they're at home, given. Yet more than one quarter, the NFPA estimates about 27% of reported fires occurred in the home between the span of 2012 to 2016. What that means for us is typically we are more apt to respond to a house fire as opposed to an industrial fire or things of that nature. To continue, even worse, 4 of every 5, so that'd be 80%, of fire deaths occur, and 3/4 of all fire-related injuries were in the home as well. Now you'll see the next fact and figure I have for you. There's a couple things bolded in red, and that'll make sense as we go through this presentation. So most home fires and fire casualties result from 5 causes: cooking, heating, electrical distribution and lighting equipment, and that includes wiring, outlets, switches, and things of that nature, and intentional fire setting. Over the 5-year period as a whole, cooking was the leading cause of home fires and injury, and right there, that red small sentence there, smoking was the leading cause of home fire deaths. Those two particular items, the cooking and smoking, are rather important to our community risk reduction plan, and we've come across these incidents as we'll discuss in the next slide here. So risk factors for Riverside Township. So just a little history on the town and facts and figures regarding it. According to the U.S. Census last conducted in 2018, there's approximately 7,800 residents in Riverside Township. So far in 2019, and this is as of July, 10 fires were reported inside the township, and obviously the fire company responded to all those incidents. Of those fires that are currently being investigated and investigations that have been closed, 60% of them were from careless cooking or improperly discarded smoking material. And if you recall, those were the two that I had highlighted on the slide previously. Unfortunately, we did report one civilian death that was attributed to improperly discarded smoking materials as a primary cause. There also was a secondary of power equipment failure, which was another one of the leading causes identified by the NFPA. So on to the next slide, additional hazards in Riverside Township. So between having a small area, largely and densely populated, we do have a lot of old and historical buildings. So many of the multi-story buildings, the strip malls uptown on Scott Street, are older than 50 years, and many of them have been grandfathered in, as they say, with fire code. So most of them are relatively old, and they don't have adequate fire protection systems, and they are rather densely populated for the services that they have and provide to the community. Another issue that's not necessarily building or causation driven is that the township does not have a full-time fire marshal's office or inspectors. We have a part-time fire marshal and one part-time inspector. In that picture I have above for you, there is the Riverline train station on Pavilion. That is the clock tower building. That building is over 100 years old. It used to house multiple businesses, and Riverside Steel was actually built off of the back part of that as well. Currently, this building poses a significant risk to us due to the developers tearing everything down, and they're going to renovate it. But we also have issues as far as kids breaking in and the structure actually falling apart as well. So research conducted by the fire company. So as a whole, we sat down the officers, the membership, the fire prevention committee, our part-time fire marshal, and inspector. And we said to ourselves, how can we better serve our community in relations to fire prevention? We always feel that we can do better in this industry, and that's what we strive to do. So we did annual evaluations of fire frequency and causes dating back to 2002 till now. So that's 16 years worth of data, because 2019 isn't over yet. And we used United States Census information to figure out the demographic of our town, how many people we have, broken down into age brackets, things of that nature. We looked at the pre-plans of the commercial, multi-story, and industrial buildings we have in town, and we digitalized them and put them into mapping software. And we also did surveys and we sent out to the residents to kind of figure out where we stand as far as quality and quantity of knowledge and awareness for fire prevention of all of our residents. It is much easier to detail and design a program once we have a basis of where we sit currently to build off of. So goals and objectives. After we sat down and we collected all this data, these were the initiatives, the goals and objectives that we came up with that we want to implement and achieve in the upcoming year. So we want to reduce careless cooking incidents by 25%. That was one of our big causes of fires in town. Luckily, due to quick responses and adequate staffing, we were able to minimize a lot of property damage as a result of them. But the frequency is still there, and that is the underlying issue. We want to reduce the number of injuries and fatalities resulting from fires by 50%. We are in the business to preserve life and property. We've done a great job at preserving property, but we feel that through education initiatives and prevention, we can also save more lives as well. We want to increase distribution of fire prevention materials and education initiative forms, and have events more than once a month. So currently we're doing once a month now. We want to move that up to 3 times a month. And then we want to optimize our Fire Prevention Week curriculum to fit our current needs established by the company. So every year we're going to reevaluate and see what was a big thorn in our side per se as far as fire causes and damages and things like that. Because we want to stay current and we want to stay relevant. Okay, so the Community Risk Reduction Plan. So our plan is to meet our established goals and objectives that we have followed here, and these are going to be the next 2 slides. So we want to provide identification placards to residents to place in windows to locate potential victims, specifically children. We are always taught in the Fire Academy and throughout our careers that children are afraid of firefighters, they're afraid of emergency incidents, and they tend to hide. We have ordered and actually distributed quite a few stickers. They're red and yellow in nature, and they have a reflective silver C that could be seen with scene lights. This helps us prioritize rooms where there could potentially be victims. So primarily these are put in bedrooms, and they're put in the windows so that as firefighters do a 360 and things of that nature, we can identify these areas. We want to do giveaways of fire prevention and recruitment events with messages about fire prevention. Specifically, we've gotten small foam footballs that have been a hit across town. Kids are always coming to the firehouse to hang out with us, talk with us about fire prevention, and of course get their footballs. We've also done water bottles in the past. We've done pamphlets. We have a wide array of giveaways and things of that nature. So I think we're doing a good job on that so far. We want to form community partnerships to establish networks to educate and engage the community. It's not always practical for everyone to come to us, to come to the fire station, to receive this education, things like that. We want to be more versatile and more engaged with our community, so we want to get out in the community. We want to go to the churches. We want to go to neighborhood watch events. We want to go to community days and just people out and about in town and spread our message of prevention. Because they come to us to handle their emergencies. Well, we need to go to them to prevent those emergencies. So that is a big, big initiative that we plan on doing a lot better on in this upcoming year. So this is continued. This is the second part of our slide here on our risk reduction action plan. So in our township, we have a large population of non-English speaking residents, primarily Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian. And we do have a small community of the blind as well. So we want to make these materials accessible to everyone. So we're going to translate all of our pamphlets and paperwork and forms and everything into Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, and Braille to really encompass everyone in our community and get out our message to everyone. We want to host a Citizens Fire Academy. So we have had one in 2018, and it was a huge hit. We had 10 students. They all passed, and upon their graduation, they were given, obviously, the knowledge of fire prevention and the ins and outs of the fire company. They were given polos with the fire company logo on them, so they could be the cheerleaders or the go-getters in the community to spread our word on our behalf as well. And they were also given CO and smoke detector, the combination detectors, and fire extinguishers to better prepare themselves and to protect themselves and their homes. It was a huge hit. We plan on doing it again this upcoming year, and there's even tentative plans to do 2 this year instead of just 1. We want to host a youth fire academy. Fire departments around us, such as Willingboro and Pennsauken, have had these youth fire academies, and they've been a huge hit. They've really engaged the community, and they've really educated the youth on fire prevention as well. And speaking to representatives from those companies, we've decided that we want to put one on as well to really reach our younger population in our town. And finally, we have a vast social media presence. We have a Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram pages. We want to use those platforms better and more efficiently. Currently, we post recalls on products and incident updates and important dates. We want to expand that to messages of fire prevention and fire prevention initiatives from the NFPA, as long as upcoming events that we really like the public to come out to spend some time talking about fire prevention activities and what's going on in town. Again, that goes back to forming community relationships, which is very key. So in conclusion, fire prevention is a delicate triangle that requires a lot of things. We could sit here and preach and preach and preach to anyone that comes through our doors about fire prevention. But the most important part of it all is the buy-in and receptiveness of the community. They have to be willing to listen. They have to be willing to implement the strategies and tactics that we give them. And they have to really put their trust in us that we have their best interests in mind, which is, again, the preservation of life and property. Along with that information, it needs to be informative and it needs to be pertinent. That's why we do these annual reviews, to see what the primary causes of fires are, to really hit home to people and to show them that this is a topic that needs to be discussed and needs to be analyzed. And finally, the enthusiasm and action of the fire prevention organization. We have a lot of charismatic and young and go-getter personalities on this committee, which is a fantastic thing. And that helps us draw in and obtain that receptiveness of the community. And I think we do a fantastic job of that. So, again, we analyze this every year. And 2019, when we look back, there may be a few things that weren't a complete success, and there may be others that were a hit. But as time goes on, we are continually optimizing and trying to be the best fire prevention organization we possibly can. And above all else, educate those willing to listen. And again, I can't stress it enough, preserving life and property. So this has been my presentation. I hope you all found it informative. And the next slide is just the sources I've cited through this to gather the data and analysis for this slideshow.